Please.
Thank you very much. My name is Masumi Owa from Nagoya College, and I have 3 points to comment on the presentation, especially as I have studied in University of Warwick here in UK, and I am graduating next week, actually. And my research is about collective action in OECD Development Assistance Committee, DAC, comparing Japan and UK in its policy and interaction. And I have interviewed more than 80 people, both in UK and Japan, and here in ODI as well. And I'd like to relate my comments to my thesis that I have written. The first thing is, through my research, I have realized that the UK's leadership, strong leadership in international development, is quite originated from 1997, where Labour Party came in and Claire Short, as a minister, was taking a strong lead. And I have been thinking why Japan doesn't have that kind of strong leadership in international development. But then this year, when the charter was published, I saw not quite strong, but some kind of strong explicitness in proactively relating Japanese aid to kind of top-down approach, which I didn't see before. So I was quite happy to see that in Japanese new ODA Charter, Development Cooperation Charter. But I think currently the discussions or argument in Japan is that the right direction? And I think various people in various sectors, they have different opinions on it. But my comment is the orientation, more explicit proactiveness of new charter is the one that I wanted to see, and I'm quite happy with that. Second point is the charter also said Japan will promote and disseminate its own aid, which I didn't see in the previous charters, especially influencing international policy, collaborating with international organizations. And I think this is a quite new policy or orientation of Japanese new charter. But when I was interviewing for my research, many people quite said, not only Japanese people, but outside of Japanese community said, Japan punches below its weight in international development. And it doesn't really speak its own experiences. And they think that Japan should speak more and share our own experiences. For example, like South-South cooperation, economic growth, we have a quite abundant experiences, especially in the field where Professor King was also mentioning. And yes, the challenge I think I see is how we would do this. And when Professor Ono mentioned about that UK is very good at setting global rule, I think this is the area where Japan and UK can have collaboration and cooperation in terms of Japanese promoting, disseminating Japanese aid. I had another point, but maybe I will
we can catch you later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Two very good points. I think one over there at the back, and one just in front after that. Go back to either order.
Thank you very much for very insightful thoughts about Japanese ODA.
Could you just introduce yourself? Sorry.
Oh, right. My name is Juan Pierre. I'm at the University of Leeds, and I work on Japanese international development to some extent. I'm really grateful for the comments from the speakers, but I think I should perhaps take this opportunity to make the point that Japan, in a sense, single-handedly turned around the economic fortunes of the Southeast Asian countries after the war. And this is often missing in the discourse about Japan's contribution to international diplomacy and, of course, international development. One thing that Professor Ono mentioned, which I think perhaps I would want to raise a question about is the point that the UK is 10 years ahead of Japan in terms of transformative development.
The inclusive business.
Inclusive business, in fact, that's the point that you made. But I suppose Japan was doing that in Southeast Asia much earlier, in the 1970s and the 1980s. So I was wondering how Britain became the leader in this exercise before Japan.
Thank you.
My name is Kenmei Tsubota from IDE Jetro. I'm an economist. One quick question is that from the new charter, can we do the experiment in the developing countries? It is quite famous, or it's becoming popular in the field of development economics, that to find the facts is important. How can we reduce the poverty, or how can we reduce or increase the education level, or many things. So how can, the question is that how can we evaluate the project? And for this point, that can we improve the process which we did? So it's a question. Thank you.
Great. I can probably take another one or two of those. Yeah, just we'll go 1, 2, 3, and we'll collect a batch. Yeah.
I'm Duncan Thompson from Crown Agents. So one comment and one question, if I may.
Okay, please.
I think one area that we noticed that Japan is definitely differentiated in international development is the universal health coverage, and that hasn't been mentioned very much in this discussion, although there is an excellent paper published by MOFA recently, the Global Health Diplomacy paper, which sets out a very ambitious program for exporting I use the word export, but sharing the experience of Japan's universal health coverage model, which we see extending itself in so many different ways, something that's really unique. So that's the comment. The other question is to Mr. Okaniwa, which is about the concept of 3D. So when he was describing the aid charter, there were lots of hooks into this idea of diplomacy, development, and defence coming together. And I just wondered if he could expand on that idea and whether he recognises it in this new charter.
Right. There's one just diagonally behind you.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Drew. I'm the head of international institutions with International Alert. I would like to explore the theme of multilaterals and especially the banks, and that in light of collaboration and this idea of sort of quality growth, particularly. I suppose in one way it's intriguing not to see any explicit mention of fragility or conflict or peace, but you know, the ideas of inclusivity, sustainability and resilience touch on those in different ways. And I'd be intrigued to hear comments around the envisaged role of influencing, particularly the ADB, where Japan has a considerable influence, but also the World Bank and other sort of multilaterals, and particularly the banks, on these issues, and to what extent is it envisaged that Japan would leverage its influence and also its new focus of this cooperation going forward within these multilateral institutions?
Wonderful, thank you. Let's come back and give Okaniwa a chance to answer one or two of them, and then the discussants may pick, and we'll come back for another round of questions in a minute. I mean, I picked up at just two or three things that are quite interesting, particularly the first set of comments about what is it now that suddenly motivated this sudden sort of strength of leadership that we see. If the question was, you know, is there now much stronger leadership on international cooperation in Japan, and is that going to convert into punching above weight rather than punching below weight? I mean, do you even accept the premise? You may not.
Right.
And then a couple of points around, I think, how that relates to issues of this defence development diplomacy nexus and probably the role of the multilateral system. That will give you 3 or 4 things, I think, to offer reflection on.
Well, there are many questions. Okay, I'll try to be brief. First one on, I guess, punching below or above one's
Yes.
weight. Well, I'm not a very weighty person, but I can say that we have taken many initiatives in the past as well. We I think proposed the original idea of the MDGs in the OECD in the 1990s. And we have also promoted the idea of human security in the 1990s. We have promoted the idea of South-to-South cooperation, which is now accepted as an effective mode of cooperation. So I don't think that we have suddenly become proactive. Having said that, I think there is a limit to how we can be effective in the international fora because of our English education. There are very few Japanese who can speak as well as myself and can also use Japanese to the same level. And if they are good at English, they're not good at their jobs more often because they don't have the specialty. I mean, they might be just a linguist, but they might not have the grasp of the contents. And I think this is a problem of English education in Japan. And so that's why we work together with World Bank or the DFID and others. Second point, right, I think the 3Ds, I wasn't sure 3D, I never knew that there was a notion of 3D as development, defense, and what was the third? Diplomacy.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I think we have strengthened the link between these three elements. First of all, we established the National Security Council in December of 2013. And also under the Prime Minister's office, we constantly have meetings on various issues of various regions. And because the Foreign Ministry also as the leading agency has not only ODA, but also dealing with trade, regional issues, terrorism, and also many other issues, that we have a very comprehensive view of what should be done for a particular issue. So I think there is a lot of interaction between us within the ministry and also with other line ministries and also with the Prime Minister's office. So I think we do have a very good coordination to solve problems in ODA and other matters. On fragility, I wasn't sure of the definition of fragility, but certainly we attach importance to resilience against natural disasters and other shocks. And so right now we are trying to build back better in Nepal. I think fragility is an issue that is important also for middle-income countries, because they may be a bit higher up in the ladder of development, but they still have vulnerabilities, perhaps in the political sort of reconciliation, or maybe sometimes environment or economic management. So I think that this is an issue, and it's all covered by, and including health. We attach importance to health, but these are all covered under human security, and also our importance attached to the MDGs and the global challenges in the document. And I think that's, I'll stop there.
Yeah, we can catch them all. Just while we're there, maybe a quick comment, Professor, on this question around who's at the top of the leaderboard on inclusive business and this movie, the inclusive business point. You might want to offer a comment on.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for your excellent questions. Yeah. Yes. I think Japan has been working closely with that. Japanese ODA has been Japan has been thinking about a close kind of relationship between ODA, infrastructure, investment, trade as a synergistic effect. That is a kind of maybe one of the reasons, together with Asian government, strong commitment and leadership to development. So that was, I think, key feature of how Asia and Japan together have kind of worked together, so the part of the development together. At the same time, that kind of approach has been there for a long time, but the inclusive business is a rather, I think, new concept. It is a kind of business sector as a core business, which will engage itself in solving social business, like a health problem, water problem, not just growth promotion. So this is a relatively new concept. And then that kind of idea has been actually much more early promoted by the, I think, UK, like a business call to the action, or you have a various challenge fund. And CDC has been working a lot on providing that kind of impact investment fund. So on that area, I think UK has been much more, I think, advanced. So we can learn a lot from them. So that is the kind of things which I feel, yeah.
Thank you very much. Is there anything you wanted to comment on at this stage?
Well, just three very short things. One, I think the point made by Kweku Ampere is absolutely central. This has not been rediscovered, the private sector. The role of trade and aid, the way that Japanese business and Japanese ODA work together to open up the economies of Southeast Asia is not really referred to at all in here, maybe for various diplomatic reasons. Japan's JBIC opened up China. Japan was the first JICA or JBIC office in Beijing is absolutely critical in doing what later, this is a very important point, has been shown to be the way that China is operating in Africa. China has borrowed the Japanese modality which was operated in Southeast Asia. And if you look at the key analysts of China in Africa, you'll see that the first chapter is entirely dedicated to Kweku Ampere's point. The second point, our friend talking about method and so on, it's very important how Japan develops these projects. And I think they do have a whole discourse about how to do it. That they don't like to use the term JICA project, Japanese project. They don't want to fund it until it has become a Kenya project. Now that actually takes more time. So there's a contradiction and a paradox that this is now about proactivity, agility, getting on with it. Who gets on with it too fast? Our friend China. So this is partly a response to China's agility in Africa, I would argue. You'll be annoyed with my saying that again, but I mean, just to provoke. But I think that is the second point. The third point is balance, punching above your weight. That is inseparable from, I think, a view about soft power and about the importance of the Japanese language. The importance of being an expert in Japanese and English without necessarily being no good at your job, if I understood what you said. Yeah. All right?
Just related to what Professor King
Very
said.
Short intervention.
The Japanese project, I think it's not a Japanese project. Yeah. I think it's a government or the counterpart project. So we don't run in parallel the project implementation facility. We don't finance the counterpart salary at all. So we will work with them, and the aim is to strengthen their capabilities so that when the project is end, it will be scaled up. So what's going on in Ethiopia in Kaizen project is that JICA started with a 30 company for the pilot, working with the 8 team of Kaizen unit team on the Ministry of Industry, and it was a quite success. And then government took initiative to set up Kaizen Institute. Now government financed 80 to 100 people for the staff. And then with JICA input, those people are trained and they are now spreading out. So it's a kind of scaling up. So it's a government initiative. So it's a way which we work. Yeah.
I think this is fascinating. I mean, one might argue the way you've just described it is another way of describing the whole notion of ownership, which is something that's been very much in the discourse of many donors. And a footnote on the Kaizen issue, actually, I'm aware that there's some of your colleagues, I think particularly within one of the divisions of JICA, have been doing some papers comparing the Kaizen approach to some of the fads around problem-driven and iterative and agile working that are happening at the moment, and actually seeing how these methodological approaches are similar or different and what one has to learn. A couple of themes I'll sort of put back to you. I can take another round of questions, and I'll probably bias a little bit that end of the room, if I may. One is just whether we think a lot of this competitive pressure amounts to something we keep hearing about. Well, this is something that China is doing something that's presented as, well, in a less favourable light as you would present it, but at the same time, on the demand side, if countries are experiencing a greater degree of agency, they have more choice, the points you make up, and that is driving this need to distinguish oneself and to make oneself competitively attractive. And if speed and agility are part of that mix that sells, then so be it. But I think in an even more interesting way, this question that's in, or this notion that's implicit in these presentations we've heard so far about whether there's a degree of convergence, a degree of commonality, a degree of affinity with, in this particular case, since we have Japan and the UK, is there something where these worlds have come together? I mean, that's the proposition, I feel, very much being put by the panel to the floor. Do we agree with that? Is there any other comments, any other views? Where are we? Let's take sort of 3 or 4 more reactions or interventions, and then we'll get a final roundup. There's a lady in the middle there to start. Yeah, well, just for the online audience, who also have a chance to ask questions if they'd like. I don't have any in yet, but I can take them if you do.
Pravina King from the University of Edinburgh Centre for African Studies. My question is that listening to all 3 of you, what struck me very much when we were in Japan is how the culture that you talk about is one of being slow, understanding, interacting over a long period of time. And in a way, culturally, that is why perhaps you've been very successful in Asia or the countries near you in Asia. And yet, this new charter speaks very much of a culture which is very different, as you said, Edward. And I just wonder whether one thing that Japan could bring, you sort of almost, I know you talk to Chinese people who are in the aid agency there and so on, but it's almost not talked about because it's seen for all kinds of reasons in different ways as competitiveness, threat, etc. And yet there's an enormous strength, perhaps, that could be drawn by more interaction. That's one of the things you can bring to the table in Asia, your long history of being involved in development, and perhaps bring to the global as well, this slow, steady commitment. And I'd just like to hear some reflection on that.
Final thoughts or comments? Oh, there we are. Sorry, I didn't see you by now. Just in the far corner.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It's very interesting. My name is Ian Brenkley. I work for a company called AECOM, which is a publicly listed environmental and engineering consultancy. My question is about climate change. Climate change is essentially a cross-cutting issue. And will have both direct and indirect impacts on the performance and the outcome of other development issues that you're looking at, such as social stability, environmental degradation, health and governance, etc. My question is, to what extent do you consider climate change will undermine the concept of quality growth? And to what extent should ODA be explicitly linked to addressing climate change issues? Thank you.
Well, we're running out of time, so I think I'll probably come back to the panel. I should say there will be a little reception afterwards. There'll be plenty of time for informal questions for anyone who's able to stay. I think there's a couple of specific questions. Maybe we'll just go in reverse order this time, so we can give Mr. Okuni the final word, which seems fitting. Professor King, is there anything, just while I know you're collecting your thoughts, is there any final thought perhaps on this question to the nature of where this slow, deliberate culture meets this competitive, fast-moving environment, and what this means for Japanese development cooperation?
Well, I think my reaction to that is that Japan does pay a lot of attention to its own language, making its own language available in a rather restricted way, as I said. But it's interesting that the Japan centers, of which there are only 10, are all clustered around Southeast Asia. They're in places like Myanmar and some of the Kazakhstan and so on. So it does seem to me that it's a great pity that and the reason there is many people are aware of the importance of Japanese companies. They prefer, as Ken was saying to me at lunch, to work in a Japanese company to working in perhaps an Indonesian company. And there are many of them there. Well, there aren't so many Japanese companies, I'm sure you know, in Africa. but nevertheless, there is, in many other parts of the world, the possibility for, I think, Japanese language to be made available, not just to the OECD, DAC countries, but to countries that would really appreciate, even though, and that would help, in fact, the FDI of Japan, if there were people who they could see were good at language. The same thing is true of the Confucius Institutes in Africa. Thanks.
A final thought.
Okay, few things. Okay, just one thing. Okay, okay. The cultural issues. I think that is a very important, and well, it is not expressly written in the new charter. At the same time, I think, as you say, Japanese kind of steadiness, steadfastness. That is, I think, here, because as in this charter, as a principle, we work together with the counterpart jointly. Knowledge creation, that has been there since the first charter. So that kind of spirit has been already here. So I think Japan is a kind of country who wants to work together with the other countries, sharing their idea, mutually learning. I thought that maybe our DNA on the ground. So that kind of idea is can continue to be here. So I don't think that is not less emphasized. And I think we should really kind of be proud of that kind of culture and continue to working together with the countries, partner countries. This final word is that I agree that strong leadership in Japan for this time in the maybe Development Cooperation Charter. At the same time, I feel a little bit pity because despite all the effort we have been doing and also try to involve many actors, that our ODA budget has not increased. So I think I really admire UK's kind of determination in allocating 0.7% of the GNI to the ODA budget. And also, we just came from Germany, and they also expanding that ODA for the 0.4%. So I really hope that Japan will act also on the ground to making a further commitment to increasing ODA budget. Thank you
very much. And also, given we were finding so much common ground, it's sort of quite good to find a contrast as well. Well, I think there were a couple of specific points that we didn't pick up earlier. The question about what the evaluation of impact and how that plays in here, and something around the climate environment. But also, in your final sort of thoughts, we've subjected this document perhaps to a much closer reading for approach and philosophy than maybe you intended. Maybe it was simply to signal the thematic direction. So you should set us straight if we've got the correct reading of it, and then give us a couple of takeaway points. Be very grateful.
Right. Well, I'm suddenly quite confused because of the some of the additional questions. But I think on the climate change question, we address this issue both from the adaptation side and also the mitigation side. I think although climate change is somewhat still in the future, but I think we need to start preparing now. And so both on the natural disaster reduction side and also energy efficiency and renewable energy and other energy-related support, we will put a lot of emphasis on this kind of assistance, because especially for both of these areas, these are new areas. I don't think other donors as well have focused really on climate change in the past. And thus, the developing countries, I think, have a need to learn a lot as well, and together with us. And that's why we are promoting the joint research scheme. And I think the UK can support this kind of an approach, because UK has a lot of academic capabilities. And also you have the advantage of using English. Second point, steady and long-term commitment. I think this is essential because the way we developed is that we try to have a strategic focus on certain industries or certain regions to develop the supply side, while we look at the sort of the human capacity development. And this is exactly what we did in Asia. For example, in the eastern seaboard of Thailand, in east of Bangkok, we we supported the development of this particular coastal area by providing assistance for electricity, port development, road, railroad. But just by having that area with infrastructure would not suffice, because if they did not have the skilled labor, there will be no one to work for the factories. And of course, no investment will come. And Thailand wanted investment from Japan, and by doing so, they wanted to develop their own industry. Japanese companies are willing to invest. But in order to realize that, we had to get all these infrastructure in place. But if the private sector from Japan invested in this area, they would need skilled labor. Or the various policy measures like legislation for labor protection, legislation for environmental control, and so on, had to be there in order for all the infrastructure to work. This takes more than 10 years. And so we worked, and we also set up the Institute of Technology in Thailand.
That's right.
And this is a 20-year effort, I think. And this is how we supported one country. We are doing the same in other countries, such as Myanmar now. And this is a long-term commitment, but happily it ended up in success. And we hope that it will be successful in Africa, where we are starting the process of developing a master plan for 5 major economic corridors. And so this long-term approach, I think, brings benefits. But I think there needs to be ownership by the government to undertake these reforms or legislation and so on. And I think this is key for development in other areas as well. The last point is that I think what we do with ODA budget, I mean, increasing the ODA budget, where do we spend the ODA budget? This is, I mean, it's a matter of debate in our diet. So it's not as if the people in government decide how do we use our budget, can we increase our budget. And we have a hard time, I think, trying to people in Japan interested in development, partly because we were successful in supporting ASEAN, other Asian countries become affluent. So we don't have refugees coming into Japan. Inside, if you travel in Japan, it's very safe, it's very stable, and so it's as if the world is it's such an easy place to live. So ordinary Japanese people, unless they go to very troubled areas, they have no notion of what kind of dangers there are abroad. But because of that, young people and many people are losing interest in what happens abroad. But it's a very difficult task for us to make people understand that although Japan and also Asia is a very stable area, thanks to our ODA as well, that there are areas which still have problems. But I think this is a difficult challenge, which government cannot do all of this to, I guess, educate people or provide information. But I think it's something that is a big challenge when you are successful in a way.
I think it's a really, really valuable point on which to end, a really thoughtful thing, and I'm sure will prompt a lot of discussion over some refreshments afterwards. So thank you very much. Well, please join me in saying thank you to 3 excellent interventions and presentations and an additional set of comments. And also our excellent set of comments, and thank you. And we must also make sure we have a copy of your paper as well to share with people as well when it's ready. I'm sure people will be fascinated to read that. And congratulations on your completion in the last few weeks. No, sometimes there are occasions when it feels a real sort of privilege to sit and chair events, and this is certainly one of them. So thank you to all of you for taking the time and coming over. And please join us as we move next door and just have a drink and something to eat. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very